Meanwhile, President Trump is headed to the southwest border with Texas Governor Greg Abbott. He will join the governor at the governor's invitation at the end of this month. This with Abbott announcing yesterday that Texas will use crowdfunding to help pay for a border wall. It will be funded through public donations from across the country to a fund overseen by the state's and governor's office. Abbott promising great transparency in all of this. Joining me right now ahead of this high-stakes meeting between President Trump and Governor Abbott is the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton. AG Paxton, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. Give us your thoughts on President Trump headed your way to go visit with the governor so that he can show him what he showed us a couple of weeks ago when we were on the ground with your team, the AG's team. Thank you for that, as well as the governor. Tell us what will be happening between Trump and Abbott, in your view.
So pretty exciting that the president's coming, given that we can't get the current administration down here to even see what's going on. I think you know just from coming down here and seeing with your own eyes, we've got problems. We've got problems with the cartels, not only bringing people across the border, but bringing drugs and smuggling people in and out. It's a massive problem. It's only getting worse. And so it's pretty exciting to have a president that actually cares about this. And so I'm grateful that President Trump is coming down here to meet with Abbott, because it highlights and it allows the media, it forces the media to look at this just like you came down here to look at it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been to McAllen with you and your team. We've been to El Paso during the Trump administration, and it was incredible the difference in terms of the number of bodies on the ground. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, General, continues to stress that the border is closed. I don't know how he can say this, but he says the border is not open, that the administration is building safe and legal and orderly avenues to seek humanitarian relief. General Paxton, we were together when we went into one of those facilities to view people there being held before they went and got processed. What is the secretary talking about when he says that the border is closed? Do you have any idea?
No, he's in another world, as you saw it with your very own eyes. There were lots of people coming to this country. They were invited to come to this country on day one by the Biden administration, and they are following through. And the only people benefiting, I believe, I mean, you saw how those kids were packed in there. We don't know where they're going. We don't know what's happening to them. What we do know is that the cartel gets paid for bringing every one of them across the border, and what control they have over them after they leave our detention facilities and where they go, we don't know. All I know is the cartels are benefiting tremendously, and I think you saw it with your own eyes. I wish the Biden administration would come and see it with their own eyes, just like President Trump and Governor Abbott are going to do coming up shortly.
Well, it's unbelievable that people are publicly shaming Kamala Harris to get to the border, but she simply will not do it, General Paxton. She says she's going to go there, but not yet. Let me ask you about what's new here, because when I was on the ground a few weeks ago, some of the border agents told me that it's on average at least 2,000 bodies a day that the criminal cartels are delivering to the border in Texas. And then we see the numbers, General. We saw the numbers: 180,000 people apprehended in the month of May. So, I mean, you do the math, that's a whole lot more than 2,000 people a day. What are we talking about? 5,000 people a day being delivered from Mexico to Texas? 5,000 new people a day. I mean, that's what these numbers suggest, right?
Yeah, and that's what the Border Patrol is saying. They're the ones that know, and they are the ones that are most frustrated. They know that these cartels are charging between $4,000 up to $50,000 per person. Do the math on that. That's just the ones we know about. They're making that money, then they're bringing these people across the border, continuing to have control over them, continuing to make money. Who knows if these people are tied up with the drug cartels forever because they can't afford the full price. So I think you saw with your own eyes, you saw it, you heard with your own ears what our Border Patrol were saying, what other elected officials, sheriffs were saying about the border. What the Biden administration is presenting to us is false. This is an open border, and it is a massive problem, and I think the numbers speak for themselves.
So, General, look, we suited up. We got in bulletproof vests. We got on a boat with you to view the border and the border towns. We passed that park where you told us that you had to pay the criminal cartels even to step foot in that park, which we viewed from the water. Then I went up in a Black Hawk helicopter with Governor Abbott to view the death and despair from above. What else will President Trump learn? Are you planning these kinds of things for President Trump? Walk us through what the President Trump will view when he goes down to the border with the governor later this month. Is he going to be up in the Black Hawk like the governor took us so that President Trump can view from above?
I think we don't know all the plans exactly because I think for security reasons they don't tell all the plans when a president comes down there. But one of the great things about what he's doing, he's highlighting the problem. And I think the media will pay attention because you've got a former president coming down here, unlike Kamala Harris, who should be coming down, who doesn't want to highlight, who spends her time in Central America, which doesn't solve the problem. It actually exacerbates the problem. And so what Donald Trump is doing is, again, helping the country focus on an issue that for some reason other administrations have completely ignored.
All right, General, we only have a couple seconds left. Real quick, let me get your take on the lawsuits that you have filed against this administration. You've sued the Biden administration 7 times, 5 times for immigration alone. Who hears those cases? What can you tell us about these cases?
Each one of these cases is in federal court. The very first case we were successful on, it's now moved because it only related to the deportation of people in the first 100 days. But we're in the middle of every single one of those lawsuits. We're trying to stop them from releasing prisoners into our state after they've been convicted of crimes. We're trying to protect people from COVID. We're trying to make sure that these people don't end up violating federal laws as it relates to becoming a sort of a cost to our country. We're trying to seek every opportunity to enforce the laws that are already on the books. The laws that we have in the books could actually work, just like they did under President Trump. He had several policies that were working, including building the wall as a long-term solution, including not catching and releasing people, which we're now doing. So it's pretty important that we continue to push the Biden administration forward on these issues.
All right, General, we'll be watching all of that. Thanks very much for being here this morning, Attorney General Ken Paxton. We will see you soon.